Power 106.5, this is Speak Life Radio, and this is Pastor Leon Purley, aka DJ Civil Rights. And once again, episode number 28, we have another special guest on tonight. My friend, I gave him his own personal nickname as Mark the Atheist, but we're just going to keep it right there. How you doing, Mark?
I'm great. How are you tonight?
Oh, I'm doing awesome, bro. Awesome, man. So, I always start my show off by just going into like just a little history of the guests, and the first question that I had for you for tonight was growing up, Mark, were your parents atheists, or like what type of background like or upbringing did you come up in, bro? Just share with us tonight on this show how it all came to life. Did you grow up in like a religious household and then later on became an atheist, or did you like just share with us? Mm-hmm.
Well, that's I don't know how much detail you want about it, but
just take your time and do your thing.
Yeah, well, I'm from Kentucky and originally, and my parents were both raised in the Southern Baptist tradition. That would have been a long time ago, of course, so I think that has changed a bit since they were growing up.
Yeah.
But they, were active as people will be when they're young in the church and into their teenage years until they went up to college, really were pretty active in the church as a community exercise, and I don't think they had really thought much about it. It was just that's just what people did, right? And, so they grew up in that kind of a tradition, and then but I've spoken to them, and I think that they never were very fervent believers in what they were being told. Again, it was more of a community exercise for them, and they lived in a small town in Kentucky, and that's just how things were, and still how things are in a lot of places. And but when they went off to college, both of them actually independently began questioning the religion that they had been brought up in. And my dad became a doctor, an anesthesiologist, and in the course of his training, he was, of course, introduced to he took a lot of science courses, and those courses, I don't know what was in them, but they would have covered a variety of topics, including probably some evolution, though I don't know how much he got. The story, as I understand it, was that he was shown the skeleton of a python, and pythons have a vestigial pelvis. They have bones that are remnants of the pelvis from a time when snakes actually had limbs. And interesting that actually a fossil was discovered recently. It was in the news a week or two ago. There was an early snake relative ancestor that actually had 4 limbs. And so anyway, my dad was shown this python with its vestigial pelvis, and he didn't understand how that fitted into a kind of biblical story of origins. And he asked when he went home, he asked his uncle, who was a town pastor, and the answer that he got was that, well, there are just some things that you're not supposed to ask about. And my dad is a very curious-minded person, always has been, and that was really the wrong answer for him. He was not satisfied by that at all. And I don't know how much of a watershed moment that was for him. He tells that story, but by the time I came along many years later, he was, well, I don't really know. I suspect that he was probably what you might call an agnostic. Religion wasn't something that, from neither of my parents was it part of their daily routine any longer, and they, I think their primary concern in raising me and my brothers was that we not be indoctrinated. I think to some extent I know that they feel very strongly that a lot of the foundational concepts in certainly Christianity and probably most religions are really well above the sort of philosophical capacity of a child to understand. And so, unlike a lot of Christians today who feel like it's, I think, very important to begin introducing your children into the religion, their view was it was actually very important to not do that. And so I honestly don't remember any discussion of religion in my house growing up, one way or the other. I never remember my parents either one saying that they didn't believe in God. I don't remember the topic of God ever coming up. They certainly didn't teach us a particular religion, but it was not it was a purposeful avoidance of the topic, and I think out of respect for their children, so that, and my dad has told me very specifically that they did that on purpose so that we would come to think about those issues at a time when we actually had the capability to think about them. So that was my upbringing.
Okay.
And not surprisingly, I wasn't. I didn't become Christian. I didn't come out of the womb Christian.
Okay.
And not being introduced to Christianity as a child, I wasn't a Christian then, and I never even thought about any of the topics really until my dad's plan worked. When I became got old enough, was in high school, and that, of course, a lot of my friends were religious. I grew up in a very religious part of the country, and I didn't have any friends where it was very serious, but I did actually when in high school I ended up with a girlfriend whose father was an evangelical in a big church, and it was a very important part of their family life, and I learned some about that and went to church with them and all of that out of respect and consideration for the family, but it's none of it ever stuck at that point, and I have never had any religious sentimentality in me at all. I've never believed in anything supernatural.
Okay. Speak Life Radio got my boy Mark the Atheist on tonight, and share with me, Mark, one of the second questions that we went over. In the Bible, it does say that, Jesus said that he's the only way to heaven. And so when was the moment that hit you that you just totally came out and said, hey, the Bible can't be true? Like, even after going to church with, your ex-girlfriend and I'm sure other Christians trying to talk to you and stuff like that, when did you have that epiphany in your life, Mark, where you're like, no, that can't be true? And not even just for Christianity. I don't want to, seclude other religions either. But when did you just say no to all of them and come to the realization that, okay, nothing exists as far as God is concerned? When did that happen?
Well,
or did you consider
there was
something?
There was no epiphany.
Okay.
As I said, I never believed in those things. So
Okay.
There wasn't a moment where I said, hey, I don't believe in that.
Okay.
There was a gradual increase in awareness and understanding of those issues as I matured as an adult, as I made my way through high school and into college, and then and continuing. And it's a topic that I've been interested in my whole life. I'm 50 years old, and I've been fascinated by the religion as a phenomenon my whole life. But there's never been a moment in my life where I believed in something supernatural in the sort of considered way. I mean, no, there never was a moment ever where I seriously considered that there was any kind of a supernatural entity. I had an imaginary friend when I was very young, when I was 5. It was a bald eagle, and that bears no resemblance whatsoever, of course, to the kinds of beliefs that adult people have.
Yeah.
But, that's the only time in my life where I can think that I considered that there was an entity that I never could see. And I was a 5-year-old kid. I think it's very common in children to have an imaginary friend like that, and it's understood psychologically, but it's not that is the only time that I can ever honestly say that I ever had any inkling of a feeling about something even remotely like a supernatural entity. So no, there's never been a moment. So when you ask about that particular passage in the Bible, I've never accepted the Bible as being a set of realistic claims. So Jesus, I simply do not take those kinds of claims seriously. It's a beautiful book, and an ugly book. I mean, there's an awful lot in it.
Yeah, there's a lot, Mark.
From a historical standpoint, but the supernatural claims of it are not something that I've ever taken seriously.
Okay, that's good. Hey, share with me, Mark, why do, and you may have to, of course, speak for the community of atheism, but share with me, why does it seem as if when you talk about atheism, it doesn't seem like they go at Allah at that much, or the monks or Buddha? Why do you think that it's such a moment of scoffing towards Jesus so much? Why does America make it seem like that?
Yeah, I think that's a misconception, honestly. First of all, there isn't really much of an atheist community. There are some people who are atheists who are active because they don't care for the influence of religion in society.
Okay.
It's very important. Atheism is not it's very important. Something I'd really like to make very clear.
Yes.
Atheism is not in itself a belief system in the way that religion is, right? Atheism is simply, depending on who you ask, you'll get different definitions.
Yeah.
Some people take a hard atheism, which is there's no God. Most atheists that I'm familiar with say, I simply don't believe it, right? It's a response. It's not a positive argument. It is, if you say, I believe in God, I say, oh, I don't. That's it, as far as atheism goes. That's the full breadth of atheism is captured by that simple statement. It is not an ethical system. It's not a system of morality. It's not a science, certainly, which is something that a lot of people make the mistake about, right? Mm-hmm. It is simply the lack of belief in any kind of a God, and I suspect that most atheists also lack belief in any kind of a supernatural entity, but that's not required. I do know atheists that believe in supernatural entities, they just don't believe in God.
Okay.
But the premise of your question is, why do American atheists seem to speak out? Those that do speak out, by the way, that's a tiny fraction of the atheists that are out there. Many atheists are, closet atheists. They do not feel comfortable really revealing their beliefs because our society is not very positively inclined towards that. And but of those that are outspoken, I guess I would say that Christianity is the dominant religion in this society, and Christianity, people who profess Christianity as a faith tend to have power to have an impact on the way our society is run, the laws that we have, and that. And so a lot of the criticism is directed at that because it's a group that has a real influence in our society. But I don't know a single atheist that doesn't criticize Allah. I'm very active on Twitter. I have 20,000 followers on Twitter. I've been doing it for years, and I've gotten to know the outspoken atheists on Twitter, at least. And,
yes.
To a person, every single one of them rejects Islam as much as Christianity, and is as or more critical of Islam as they are of Christianity. The other religions, there are 3,000 religions in the world, so it's just a matter of priorities and time, of course. I don't see a lot of people, running around complaining about the Jainists or, religions that they don't have much power. But Christianity and Islam are the two largest organized religions in the world, and of those two, I regard Islam as currently a much more serious threat to the modern world.
Yeah.
But Christianity has a huge impact as well, and Christianity historically has become very secularized. That is, it has changed a lot over the centuries, and in modern countries that are dominated by Christian people, there are laws that prohibit the kind of behavior that is possible with a group like ISIS or something like that.
Yeah.
But I see both of them as part and parcel of the same phenomenon, right? The problem with both is that if you can convince somebody that they should believe something on faith without questioning it, then you can convince them of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, to me, and I think most atheists, at the heart of our problem with organized religion. There's no check on what can be claimed and what moral statements can be made and what demands can be placed on the adherents of those religions. And you see that resulting in, really grotesque kinds of behaviors now in the Islamic world in a lot of ways. So there, just as there are in Christianity, there are a lot of very nice, pleasant Christians. There are also a lot of very nice, pleasant Muslims, I have no doubt. But the kinds of really radical, extreme manifestations of religion that you see, both in Christianity and Islam, are something that is a big thing that atheists fight against. It's one of the main things that we fight against, or speak out against anyway. We don't fight, but we speak out against these things. And so, that idea that we primarily attack Christianity, I think that that's a byproduct of the fact that Christianity is the dominant religious power in this country, but it has nothing to do with atheists being in any way more accepting of any other religion that fosters those kinds of views.
That's good. That's good. So Mark, how do you feel like, with, you meet Christians and stuff, and then, they talk about the love of Christ and everything. And so, like, how do you define love? Like, you have your family and you love your family. And so, like, explain to the world how, when you see evil being done. I know in atheism they don't believe in sin and everything, because then you have to equate it to the Bible. Like, how do you deal with that? Like, if something, like, hypothetically speaking, your whole family was murdered by someone, do you say, oh, he just did an evil act, or, oh, no, that is sin? Or, like, how do you deal with morality, in your own opinion?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, a big topic, of course. I pointed out before that atheism isn't a system of morality or ethics, right?
Yes,
so,
yes.
It raises that question of, well, what is the morality or ethics of an atheist then? And another thing that I'd really like to emphasize, because quite honestly, I think it's taught by pastors across the country that atheists are Satan worshipers and that we are immoral.
Yeah.
If you ask a lot of Christians, they believe that atheists are immoral, and many of them believe that we're Satan worshipers. I don't believe in any supernatural entity, Satan included. That's all part of the Christian worldview.
Yes.
So, Christians try to wedge atheists into their own view of reality, and if you're not for God, then you must be for Satan, I guess, is the simple equation. I reject all of that completely. All atheists do. So that idea of Satan, I just want to make it clear that that's not something. I'm not a Satanist. There are people who are Satanists. They believe in Satan and they follow Satan, whatever. I'm not among those, and atheists aren't as a general rule. It really kind of goes against the definition of atheism. But as far as morality and ethics and all of that goes,
yes.
we have a large, rich, long history in Western civilization developing the foundations for ethics from within the school of thought that we call philosophy.
Okay.
And, of course, there is what some people call religious philosophy, the philosophy associated with religious belief. But there is a very large and really probably much larger philosophy that is does not find the foundation of morality in the edicts of a supernatural entity, and instead views morality and ethics as a phenomenon to understand and to try to develop our own understanding of what the right kind of behavior is. I don't believe that there is any objective morality in the way that a Christian does. I don't even actually think that Christian objective morality is objective, but there's this idea that morals are like things, right? God created this moral and it exists in some way, and morality involves behavior, first of all. I don't think that it makes any sense to talk about something like a thought crime. Morality has to do with how you behave towards others. And the foundation for how you behave towards others, I think we have to put something there that we value.
Yes.
And I think humans across the board tend to value similar things. We value life, our own, certainly, and I think that of our loved ones and of others. We value, and I'm talking about all humans.
Yeah.
Right? We value freedom. We value the ability to chart our own course. We value fairness, almost above anything else. We want to be treated equally with other people. And why do we feel that way, I guess, is the question. And I'm an evolutionary biologist, right? After going through all of my college education, I kept going, and I have a PhD, and I'm a college professor. And I teach evolutionary biology. And so within evolutionary biology, you have a more expansive view of the way that organisms go about treating one another. And I think within that, what we see is in species other than humans, we see the kind of seeds of behavior that we can really relate to in a lot of ways. Many species have been studied and been shown to have a strong sense of fairness, for example. Many species have been studied and have a strong sense of empathy, right, concern for others. I think those are evolved traits, and I think that's why we value the things that we do. And so if you were to just ask somebody, well, how would you like to be treated? I think that they would emphasize those things. I'd like to be treated fairly. I'd like not to be killed, right?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. I don't think that requires a God in there at all to do that. It requires people who have feelings about those things, and the fact that people across the planet tend to feel the same way about those things means that we can sit down and say, well, what's the best way to go about maximizing those things? How can we go about making sure that everybody's treated fairly? What's the best way to go about doing that? And we can build an ethics upon rational thought, right? I mean, we can build space shuttles. We can figure out how to treat each other in a way that we like. If I had to sum up the core principle of my morality, it would be the golden rule. The golden rule doesn't come from the Bible. The golden rule is in the Bible, but it's in the early texts of many civilizations in one form or another. The basic idea that you want to be treated the same that other people are treated, that you should do unto others as they do unto you.
I agree.
Is not unique to Christianity. In fact, I don't even really understand it within Christianity because it seems to give power to people to make the decision about how to treat others. But that seems, in my mind, to conflict with the Christian idea of morality, which is a list of behaviors that you need to engage in, right?
Like the Ten Commandments, yeah.
Right, that come from God. So, in the golden rule is, well, you as a person decide how you want to be treated, and you should treat other people that way as well. That's a great way to go about developing an ethics, and it doesn't require any kind of a God to get there.
Yeah. Power 106.5, Speak Life Radio. You're on with Pastor Leon Purley. We're hanging out. Mark the Atheist tonight. And so, Mark, like you said that you have your PhD, and you've been teaching in college level courses and stuff. So what is your take on, I'll say the scripture, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and we live in the earth, and we see that the sun's in the sky, the moon and everything. And, from a Christian's perspective, I believe God put that there. But from your perspective, Mark, please share with us, how did, you come about? How were you created? Where did humans come from? And once again, you have to kind of speak for the people, the few people that believe in atheism, but share with us that, if God didn't create the heavens and the earth that we live in, how did it come about? Who do you think was the first two?
I'll emphasize that my answer to this is not part of atheism.
Okay. Your own opinion.
My answer to this is made up of a series of claims that are scientific conclusions.
Okay.
I'm a scientist, and I value science. I think science is the most powerful approach that we have to developing knowledge and understanding the world around us. And that's how I use it. But that's not part of atheism necessarily.
Okay.
I think probably many or most atheists feel similarly to me in that regard. But it's not, again, atheism isn't a system. Atheism is simply, I don't believe in God.
Okay.
What you replace the religious stories about origins with, or what you replace the religious stories with regard to morality, that will differ from one person to another, from any atheist to another. Just as it does among religious people. There's, even within the traditional religions, there's tremendous diversity in terms of the answer that you'll get if you ask them that same question. If you just ask that question that you asked me about Genesis 1:1 to any random Christian,
yes,
some of them will take a strict literal interpretation of the Bible and say, well, yeah, God did it in 6 days, and the earth is less than 10,000 years old, because that's what Bishop Ussher calculated a long time ago, and I believe everything that's in the Bible. Other Christians will say, well, I think that's more of an allegory. I don't think that's meant to be true, taken literally. I think it's a parable about the origin. Yes, God is responsible for it all, but in terms of the details of how it came about, you'll get a huge range of different opinions on that.
Yeah.
And that's just within Christianity, of course.
Yes.
It's not even remotely monolithic in terms of its answer to that question.
Okay.
Science is pretty consistent, though, about the answers to that. My specialty, actually, is human origins. I study where humans came from. And humans evolved, like every other organism on the planet, is the overwhelming consensus among biologists or any scientific discipline that bears on it. We have a huge fossil record documenting it. We have rich, well-tested scientific explanations for the processes that affect living species and that cause them to change or not change or diversify. And what the fossil record and genetics and many other disciplines tells us is that humans evolved on this planet in the same way that other species evolved on this planet, by the same processes. Of course, we're different from other species in many important ways.
Mm-hmm.
If other species could talk, and that is one of our unique attributes,
Yeah.
I suspect that they would say the same thing. Because every species is, in fact, unique, has its own characteristics. But we have historically tended to really emphasize the things that we're proud of about ourselves, our language, our intelligence, right, our tool making, our technological craftiness, those kinds of things, and our morality.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have emphasized those as being uniquely human with no parallel whatsoever in the non-human world. And that's simply not true. Every single one of those things has is represented in ways in the non-human world, including morality. And so
do you feel like Mark?
My view of Genesis 1:1.
Yes.
It's a nice story, but it's not literally true. We know that it's not literally true. It is incompatible with what we know from science.
Mm.
It's not a series of scientific hypotheses that anybody has ever really subjected to scientific tests, because it's not set up. The Bible is not set up as a set of tests.
Mm-hmm.
And most Christians, honestly, they find the idea of testing the Bible to be pretty abhorrent, because of course it's supposed to be believed on faith.
Mm-hmm.
But the depictions of events that are presented in the Bible are not accurate statements in many ways about the way that the long past, long history of the earth and the universe.
And how do you feel, Mark? Do you feel like, going back to your statement that humans just evolved, do you feel like you should have seen other humans just evolved out of nothing, or do you still keep the mom and dad in the picture as having to, come together and then create you so you can have parents? Or do you believe that, if you have a broken Rolex and you put it in a bag and shake it up, it should just evolve back into a complete, well-working Rolex? So how do you feel?
There are a lot of misconceptions in your question.
Yes.
So I'll have to just sort those out.
Okay.
Evolution is something that occurs to populations, not to individuals.
Yes.
Okay, so populations or species, and it is an incremental process of change that results from the kinds of tiny differences that are produced during the process of reproducing. So when you ask about parents, or did a human just pop out of nowhere, if one did, that would disprove evolution, right? That's actually the Christian story.
Mm-hmm.
The human popped out of nowhere. Like Adam, not there, now he's there. No parents. That's popping out of nowhere. If that happened, that would disprove evolution, because in evolution, all individuals are members of an evolving species. They all have parents, or a parent. I mean, we're talking about life generally. Not all species are reproduce sexually. Most of them don't. Bacteria do not, and bacteria are far and away more numerous than humans or any other species. So the process of reproduction, though, results in tiny changes. You have approximately 150 mutations in you compared to your parents, right? Mm-hmm. You understand that you are in part the way that you are because of the DNA that's in your cells, and that's the inherited part that is you got from your parents, right? A sperm and an egg came together carrying their own complements of DNA, and that combines to produce the DNA that is in you, in all of your cells, most of your cells. Mm-hmm. And that DNA, it's 3.2 billion what we call bases long, 3.2 billion letters, if you will, long. And errors are made, not very commonly, out of 3.2 billion.
Yeah.
Again, approximately 150 occur on average, each generation, each time a new offspring is produced. And, of course, those mutations, by and large, have no effect on you whatsoever because most of your DNA doesn't do anything. So it doesn't matter if you change a little bit of it. It's just ignored. But those mutations can, really what they do is they produce variation, right? They make you a little bit different in some way, potentially. They don't have to. They make you potentially a little bit different in some way, usually a very tiny way. But we have this idea that mutations are always this dramatic thing that has a terribly negative effect on people, and that's just not true. The vast majority of mutations that don't do anything at all, and the ones that do occur, some of them produce negative effects, some of them produce what you might regard as a positive effect. And if they do, and here positive means that they in some way augment the individual's ability to have offspring themselves. Maybe they make the person a little bit faster. Maybe they make the person a different color. The ways in which organisms can become adapted to their environments are essentially infinite. And whatever it does, the mutation simply causes a little bit of variation to be produced. And then the process of natural selection may kick in and magnify that trait in the population, not in that individual. You have 150 mutations. That's not going to change for you. That's what you got. That's what you were dealt by the process of reproduction. But I don't know how many children you have.
Oh, one.
But if you have a lot of children, then you're likely to pass on a lot of copies of those mutations. They will inherit your mutations. If you don't have any children, then all of those 150 mutations that are in you are gone, right? If you never have any children, you're not going to pass on copies of those changes to your DNA. So whether you have a lot of children or
no, I have one son.
An effect on the population, on the species. So those little small processes acting over long periods of time are the things that influence all species. And it's a very different view of evolution than I think many creationists are given the impression of. Honestly, the way that process is depicted, in my experience, by Christians is a complete straw man. It's a misrepresentation of the scientific conclusions about that.
Okay. Speak Life Radio. It's your boy, Pastor Leon Purley, on with Mark the Atheist tonight. Just hanging out and everything, spitting knowledge back and forth. So, 2 more questions, Mark. I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate you coming on tonight, brother. This next question is kind of a 2-part. I want you to explain the first part and then the second. The first part, I want you to explain what happens to Mark the Atheist when he takes his last breath. Okay, that's the first part. And then the second part would be, let's say Jesus Christ really existed. He is the judge of the world. We have to give an account for our sins, like the Bible says, and you do see him when you take your last breath. What's your first thoughts that's going to go through your mind? But answer the first part, because that would be your own, take on what happens when Mark passes away.
Yeah. What happens when a person dies?
For you, yes.
What do I think happens when a person dies?
Yeah, after your heart is dead.
They stop existing.
Okay.
Their physical body simply stops metabolic processes, life ceases, and I don't believe in a soul.
Yeah.
That's a supernatural entity, and so the idea that would outlast us, that there's some part of us that would outlast our physical body makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Okay.
And I'm perfectly happy with that. I didn't exist for about 13.5 billion years before now, and won't exist again once I'm gone, and that's okay.
Okay. And
of course, everybody would like to live forever, and so I think there's a strong desire that really drives a lot of religion.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe that religion was born out of the fear of death, either our own or the anguish that comes when we lose a loved one, and the hope that we might see them again someday, which those are perfectly natural psychological, feelings to have.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an awful lot of people thinking that the universe must follow their feelings, you know. There's all kinds of things that I would love. I would love it if we lived, there actually was a soul that lived for eternity. I think that would be awesome. I just don't believe that it's the case. Yeah. So that's the answer to the first part.
Okay.
The second part, if I'm wrong and I find myself standing before the almighty, all-knowing, omnipotent creator of the universe,
yes,
I have complete confidence that such an entity already understands everything about me and my life and the processes and influences on it in such a way that he would not judge me and decide to torment me for eternity as some sort of foul payback. I think revenge is one of the basest of instincts, and the idea that I would be tormented for eternity because in my narrow lifespan of 50 years now, and hopefully another 50 by the time I do take that last breath, that is mathematically zero relative to infinity, right?
Yeah,
so we're talking about eternity.
Yeah.
I don't believe that an all-loving, all-knowing entity could create a system in which he knew in advance what each individual was going to do with their life and what they were going to think at the end of their life, and decide to punish them for eternity on the basis of that. That, to me, has always seemed like just about the most farcical interpretation of reality that one could have. Right? An all-loving, omnipotent, all-knowing entity that knows in advance what's going to happen, and yet creates people, humanity, knowing that the majority of them are going to burn in hell for eternity. That's incompatible with all-loving. An entity wouldn't do that. Now, a Christian will say, well, you don't know what an entity would do. You're not God. Are you God? Right? That's what they'll say. No, I'm not God. But I have a rational mind that is, in the Christian view, supposed to be crafted upon the image of God. And I trust my rational mind to make that simple calculation. An all-loving, all-knowing entity that knew what was going to happen in advance could not behave in such a way that billions suffered for eternity. So, if I were to meet Jesus, and I trust fully that the Christian depiction of that entity is wrong. If it's not, then I'll say, well, I don't like you very much. I think you're a mean entity. And if you're going to punish me for eternity because I didn't believe in you in my lifetime, then you have the power to do it. I can't do anything about it, but you're a jerk for doing it.
So the whole salvation deal, because Jesus came and died for your sins and for our sins, that's totally out of the picture because, once again, like Mark said, he would have to believe in the supernatural for that to even be true.
Oh, yeah, that none of that makes any sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
The idea of original sin, which is not, that was really a later development in Christianity. It is not viewed that way in all of the Abrahamic religions, and it's not viewed that way in all of Christianity. But within the dominant forms of Christianity, that idea of original sin, where, what do you think? Where does cancer come from?
I don't know.
Why is there cancer in the world? Did God create that?
No, I would say sin.
Sin can't create anything, though, right? Cancer is a complex thing. So,
but it's a disease.
Sin can't create that. Did God create everything in the universe?
I would say so, except for evil.
So then God created cancer, and sin is the punishment for Adam and Eve, naive Adam and Eve, doing one thing wrong, and then all the rest of life
Yeah.
in the universe from then on pays for that. That seems silly to me.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the idea of an all-loving entity that would impose that kind of a judgment on people is ridiculous. And then furthermore, to say, well, I'm going to kill them all because they're sinners, except for whatever it was, 8 on Noah's Ark. That's my first attempt to clean up this mess, which I knew was going to happen in the first place. The second attempt is, well, I'm going to go to Earth as my son. I'm going to impregnate a woman, and she's going to give birth to me, and then I'm going to die in order to, in some way, in some weird sort of blood revenge, very 2,000 years ago kind of way, to pay for this sin that exists in the world. That whole story makes no sense to me. I find it ridiculous. If God wanted to make sin go away, then he could just fake it in a moment. We're talking about an omnipotent entity. He wouldn't have to send somebody to Earth to be tortured on a crucifix. He wouldn't have to do that. So the whole story is ridiculous to me. That whole idea, frankly, the idea, I see this, one of your questions on your list was about what I see as some of the, 3 of the things that I don't like about religion.
Name
right
those.
Up there at the top is this idea that humans are broken from birth. We are sinners from birth, and we live a life of sin, and that the only way that we can be in any way redeemed and then get into this special place we call heaven is to forego our rational thinking and accept this fanciful story. I'll be completely honest with you.
Yes, Mark.
That has every indication of being a very simple-minded way of manipulating people through guilt and fear. And that is the tool of Christianity. And modern Christianity also uses the carrot of love, right? Really promotes the idea of love. That has not been the case throughout the history of Christianity. But even in modern churches, there's always the threat. The threat's told to children. That if they don't believe this one particular thing, they're going to burn for eternity. That I can think of no more pernicious idea in all of human history than that. And it is, to my mind, an outright threat. It is an outright tool of manipulation, playing on people's worst fears about their future and what will become of them, to force them into compliance, to coerce them into compliance with this system.
What was your third one, Mark?
Was I listing them? That was the main one. That one's right up there at the top.
You gave us one. Okay. Did you give 2? I think you don't. Okay, give 2 more.
Oh, well, I didn't prepare a list.
Okay.
that one is right up there at the top. The manipulation of people through guilt and fear and the pain that causes people. The idea of faith being a virtue is right up there next to it. They go hand in glove, right? The idea that you should believe despite anything that you're told. And I interact with Christians all day long who tell me, I don't care what you tell me. I don't care what the facts are. I believe in this, and I'm going to believe in this. And there ain't nothing you can do to make me stop believing in this. Nothing that anybody can do. I'm going to believe it.
Yeah.
That is that's a vile way to lead one's life, in my mind. That is a terrible way to go about navigating reality. Because you can believe anything with that. I said before, if you can convince people that faith is a virtue and that they're only going to get into heaven if they ignore everything that they learn, then you can convince them of anything. You can make them do anything. The same exact principle is behind ISIS.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And all the Abrahamic religions that utilize that. So the idea of faith I regard as deeply deeply immoral.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever, what other?
One more, Mark. One more, Mark.
One more. The traditional, well, the ways in which Christianity crystallized a very primitive mindset about the nature of human interactions and the interactions of humans with other life on the planet. So this very primitive patriarchal notion of the man being the head of the household, the woman having a certain set role in the household, all depending on childbirth, all centered around childbirth. The idea of humans having dominion over the rest of the planet. I don't know. I doubt that Christianity came up with those ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect that they were simply primitive, ignorant ideas that got, again, kind of crystallized into Christianity. But this is what religions do. They make such ideas, bad ideas, divine.
Mm-hmm.
And they last as a result. All right?
Uh-huh.
If that's if the Bible says homosexuality is a sin and wrong, then that's just it for all eternity, because that's supposedly a divine statement.
Mm-hmm.
I regard that the treatment of women, the treatment of children, right?
Uh-huh.
Bear the rod, spoil the child, has led to countless billions living lives of misery. And the attitude that we have towards the planet, the idea of us having dominion over the rest of life, I think has been tragic, just tragic. So, yeah, I mean, I have a list of hundreds of things that I don't like about religion, but those have got to be right up there at the top.
Okay. Well, we'll save that for part 2, Mark, because I'm sure we'll chop it up again. So in closing, Mark, the question I always leave the show with, no matter what, is the legacy. When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered by your wife? You have kids, you said, and what type of legacy do you want to leave behind for them to be able to say, hey, we remember Dad for this, or we remember,